Hey YouTube, Josh here with Tipsy Python, your casual guide to learning how to drink whiskey like a boss. I realize that my videos with Tipsy Python have been a little heavy on the Python part, and yeah, we've touched on the tips, we've had a good time, but to dignify the journey that these bottles have been on, I figured why don't we do just a whiskey recap episode and talk about the whiskeys of season 1. And while all of these whiskeys are good, each one has its own merits, let's get down to brass tacks and figure out which one of these is my most enjoyable. It gets really tough for me thinking about which one I enjoyed the most because, hey, these are some really competitive ones. Like, I picked the cream of the crop from my whiskey collection to start off season 1, so this is going to be tough for me. But being fair to you guys and trying to do a ranking, there's definitely one of them that made the bottom of the list for me. The Jameson Caskmates IPA finish. And like I called out in the video when I enjoyed this one, like, I'm not the biggest IPA guy, so probably this was a poor choice on my part. I had never tried it before tasting it on that episode when I filmed it, and my expectations were probably just not set correctly for what I was going to get out of this one. So not repulsive, not bad, just not my cup of tea. Moving on through the bottles here, next up I'm going to put the Jameson Standard Bottling. And again, not knocking it, this is just a competitive batch of whiskeys. Like, there's a lot of things I enjoy about the Jameson. I do keep a bottle on hand at all times. I usually have the bigger one. It just wasn't competitive with some of these obviously more expensive whiskeys that we have in the lineup. Moving on, Jameson fans, don't hate me. Don't hate me, guys. The Jameson Black Barrel came up next. Again, I thought this was a nice step up over the Jameson Standard labeling. We get a nice, like, smoky char in the flavor that I really enjoyed. I think it adds a lot of complexity over the base Jameson. It just didn't overfloat my boat. It's still a triple distilled spirit, and so I think some of these flavors are tamed down a bit. It's only 80 proof, and I think everything over here is above that. It's just not as punchy as I like my whiskey personally, but still very, very good. As you can probably see in the fill level, I have enjoyed this bottle. I revisited it since the video that I made. It's a solid addition to my collection, and Jameson Black Barrel gets a thumbs up from me. Now it's starting to get really tough. Next up, a pair of bottles came to mind as far as ranking. Eagle Rare and Weller 12. Now, both of these are good bourbons. I have to say I'm partial to the Eagle Rare. Like, the flavor of it, I like the spiciness. I love E.H. Taylor, which I believe is the same mash bill, just a little proofed up. And the Weller 12 is unique as well because there's a lot of bourbons where you can say, if it's not on the shelf, I'm going to get something else. And with Weller 12, I can't say if it's not there, then get, Wyoming single barrel or whatever. It's a pretty novel and unique bourbon. Both of these are pretty good. I think they're both priced around $30 or $35 MSRP. In terms of ranking though, I'm going like this. I'm saying Weller 12's coming in a little under Eagle Rare. Now the bourbon community, they would crucify me for this. Like, this is a hot bottle, but I think it's definitely overhyped for what it is. Weller 12 has good flavors, but in my opinion, it's not standing up to some of the heavier hitters in the bourbon world. And just the fact that it's so unavailable. I do like having it around. I do like drinking it, but for the day-to-day drinkability, I'm going Eagle Rare. I like this bottle a lot, and really when it comes down to it, I like the brand Eagle Rare more than I like Weller. Oof. 10 and 12 year bourbon. Hard choices were made today, folks. Moving on to the rest of these. Again, another hard choice. A pair of them came to mind as far as the rankings next. I'm grabbing these two. Old Forester 1920 and the Woodford Double Oak. Both of these are really good bourbons. I think they're around the same price, like $55, $60. Now, you cannot compare these bottles apples to apples. They're very different. One being aged in 2 barrels, one being 115 proof, much higher than the other. And really, I think that was the determining factor in the two. When it comes to the ranking, I'm putting Woodford Double Oaked a little bit lower than 1920. I hope you can tell when I was drinking it, I really enjoyed the Double Oak. It's one of my favorite bourbons. It has this like really vanilla caramel oak forward note to it. But that being said, like, it's also kind of one note. It doesn't have the bouquet of flavors that the 1920 does, and that's why I put the Old Forester a little ahead. All right, 3 bottles remain. Next, I'm going with the Glenmorangie Sherry Cask Finish. There's probably a ton of personal bias packed into this one because I think typically the Glenmorangie would land somewhere around here. Now, my personal palate kind of fluctuates back and forth between Scotch and bourbon, and it just so happens I haven't had that much Scotch recently. I think that's why I enjoyed the flavor of this one. And like I said, I just love cask finished whiskeys. Like, this is a really good one. The lingering fruit flavor on the finish is what I'm thinking about as I'm putting this so far ahead in the ranking, and it's what I know that you'll enjoy about it too if you sip this one. All right, 2 bottles remain. Where are we gonna land with this? The runner-up is gonna be Blanton's Single Barrel. Blanton's has some haters. There's people who call it about Blantons, but I think the flavor's pretty good on this. It isn't easy to find. It might be just a hair overpriced, but it does have a decent amount of complexity to it. I enjoy sipping on it. I find new flavors every time I do. And it's a pretty good representation of that flowery, fruity Buffalo Trace distillate. Yeah, maybe it could be proofed up a little bit more, but again, the bottle itself is a pleaser. It's cool to have on the shelf. It's cool to share with people. It's one that I enjoy sipping on myself. So Blanton single barrel, cream of the crop, good bourbon. And guys, in the video, I said it was the king of $40. I didn't know it was the king of kings. 4 Roses single barrel. Now, 4 Roses checks all the boxes for me. I mean, it is a single barrel. I guess there is some variation. Maybe I have a particularly good one. It has a great layering of flavors. It's proofed at 100, right where I like my bourbon. And then there's the value factor. I mean, for $40 and for something that you can always find on the shelf, you don't have to beg people for it. 4 Roses single barrel is a no-brainer for me. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed my reviews of these whiskeys. I hope you enjoyed sipping on them with me. Hopefully you enjoyed some whiskey yourself. As season 1 comes to an end, I want to enjoy one last drink with you guys and say that I really enjoyed the process of making this show. I want to give some shout outs to my family, my friends, my coworkers, my beautiful fiance who puts up with me making a show about code and bourbon. Just the act of making these videos was so enjoyable for me. I enjoyed bringing out these whiskeys and doing a little bit of coding with you guys. And I sincerely hope that you learned something from it. I mean, I worked through the Python the way that made sense to me, and I wish someone had explained it to me. So hopefully it was the same for you, and hopefully you got some hands-on experience and you were able to learn something out of all this. 4 Roses single barrel, so good. All right, friends, that wraps up for me. I want to end it with a toast. Until next time, friends, stay safe, stay healthy, and try to have some fun because life's short and it's important. Till next time, Tipsy Python.